So I look forward to visiting what I hear is a beautiful country. Christy Parsons. Question, thank you, Mr. President. On the Trans-Pacific Partnership, how do you plan to sell this to these Asian leaders who still have work to do in their own countries, and with some political It's not the politics aren't easy, and maybe they don't want to do that. So much of it seems like the future is rocky in the US. Can you the US? Usually ratifies its trade deals. Do you plan to convey a sense of inevitability? Do you feel that for the lame duck session? Even if it doesn't happen then, do you feel like it's inevitable anyway? And, if I may, I wonder what you think about the silent protest of Colin Kaepernick. And I also wonder what you think about the public response to it, which is really divided. I mean, some police don't want to secure 49 ERS games. And many fans feel that he's giving voice to something they feel strongly. So I just wonder how you look at that. President Obama, well, with respect to TPP, I don't have to sell it to Asian leaders here who were. Part of the negotiations because they see this as the right thing to do for their own countries. And when you look at the architecture, the structure of TPP, what it does is open up new markets for us that are generally closed. Our markets are more open than theirs for the most part. So we benefit from a reduction in tariffs and taxes that are already in place. but for many of them, what they benefit from is this trade deal is the spur. The incentive for them to engage in a whole bunch of structural reforms that they know, over the long term, will reinvigorate their economy. So, for example, Prime Minister Abe of Japan, yes. He's having to make some difficult decisions about opening up markets that previously have been closed. But he's also looking at a couple of decades of stagnation and anemic growth. And what he said to the Japanese people is, if we want to break out of this, then we're going to have to change how we do business. And this provides us a roadmap of how we can become more competitive on the world stage. Vietnam, that, for the first time, is debating in a very serious way how they can provide protections to their workers and allow them to participate and have voice and bargain for wages. And, yeah, that's tough politically for Vietnam. On the other hand, they recognize that if they want to move up the value chain in the global market, that they've got to start abiding by basic norms. So the good news is they're ready to go. And what I'll be telling them is that the United States has never had a smooth uncontroversial path to ratifying trade deals, but they eventually get done. And it's my intention to get this one done, because, on the merits, it is smart for America to do it. And I have yet to hear a persuasive argument from the left or the right as to why we wouldn't. Want to create a trade framework that raises labor standards, raising environmental standards. Protects intellectual property, levels the playing field for U.S. businesses, brings down tariffs. It is indisputable that it would create a better deal for us than the status quo. Nobody has been able to describe to me with all the general criticism of trade that you hear coming out of some quarters. Nobody is able to describe to me how this would not be a significant improvement for U.S. workers and U.S. businesses going forward compared to the status quo. And so I intend to be making that argument. I will have to be less persuasive here because most people already understand that. Back home, we'll have to cut through the noise once election season is over. It's always a little noisy there. And in terms of Mr. Kaepernick, I got to confess that I haven't been thinking about football while I've been over here. And I haven't been following this closely. But my understanding, at least, is that he's exercising his constitutional right to make a statement. I think there's a long history of sports figures doing so. I think there are a lot of ways you can do it. As a general matter, when it comes to the flag and the national anthem, and the meaning that that holds for our men and women in uniform and those who fought for us. That is a tough thing for them to get past to then hear what his deeper concerns are. But I don't doubt his sincerity, based on what I've heard. I think he cares about some real legitimate issues that have to be talked about. And if nothing else, what he's done is he's generated more Conversation around some topics that need to be talked about. So, again, I haven't been paying close attention to it. But you've heard me talk about in the past the need for us to have an active citizenry. Sometimes that's messy and controversial, and it gets people angry and frustrated. But I'd rather have young people who are engaged in the argument and trying to think through how they can be part. Of our democratic process than people who are just sitting on the sidelines and not paying attention at all. And my suspicion is that over time he's going to refine how he's thinking about it. And maybe some of his critics will start seeing that he has a point around certain concerns about justice and equality. And that's how we move forward. Sometimes it's messy, but it's the way democracy works. All right, last one. Angela Greeling-Keane of Bloomberg. Question, thank you, Mr. President. The G20 group today discussed the importance of tax fairness and consistency among countries. For you, how much of that discussion was centered on the Apple case and the EU's decision? And how do you balance your efforts here to ensure global tax fairness with your need and desire to protect U.S. companies and their shareholders? And if I may, on one other business topic. How would you assess the likelihood of the actions taken on steel today of making a difference in overcapacity? President Obama, those are both great questions. This issue of tax avoidance and tax evasion is something that we have actively promoted as an issue for the G20 to tackle. We've worked with not only the G20 countries, but also some of the multilateral organizations. Like the OECD, to refine how we can approach these problems. It's a complicated piece of business. We did not bring up the specific case of Apple, because as a general rule, I don't want to bring up a single case in a forum like this where we're trying to shape broader policy. But at home, we have been focused whether it's on the inversion rules that we put forward. The proposals that we put forward to define who the beneficiaries are behind the veil so that we can catch people who are avoiding. Their taxes. We're doing a bunch of stuff at home, and we want to coordinate better norms internationally. The one thing that we have to make sure we do is to move in concert with other countries. Because there's always a danger that if one of us acts unilaterally, that it's not just a matter of AU. As company being impacted. But it may also have an effect in terms of our ability to collect taxes from that same company. And so you might end up with a situation where they pay into Europe. And the US Treasury is shortchanged. So if there is not some coordination between various tax authorities, you get a problem there. In the same way, we think there has to be some coordination about even some of our closest allies racing to the bottom in terms of how they enforce their tax. Policies in ways that lead to revenue shifting and tax avoidance in our country. So this is not something that I think is going to be sorted out overnight. I do think that if we are to regain the trust of ordinary people, but the system is not rigged. And deal with these trends of inequality that have risen out of globalization and technological change. That we've got to make sure we tackle this issue in an effective way. And we've made some progress, but not as much as we need to. And my hope is that it's recognized that it's in the interest of all countries, whether they're developed countries or developing countries, to work together to put a stop to this. Because developed countries are losing revenue, and that erodes their tax base and their ability to educate kids and build universities and build infrastructure, but it also wallops developing countries. Because oftentimes tax avoidance can go hand in hand with corrupt practices that impede development. In terms of excess capacity, this is an issue that we wanted to get on the agenda. We got it on the agenda. In my bilateral conversations with President Xi, there was an agreement that we would make progress on dealing with steel overcapacity, which, by the way, is consistent with the plans that President Xi himself has had to reorient the economy. So that it's not so heavily dependent on state-owned enterprises and an export model. So, we've made some progress, not as much as we'd like to see, but some progress on that front bilaterally. Multilaterally, the way this was resolved was the G20 agreed to put together an intensive process of gathering all the data. Determining what the best steps are, which will then be reported in the G20 in Hamburg next year. And I think there was a validation of the basic principle that to the extent that overcapacity is the result not just of market forces but specific policy. Decisions that are distorting a well-functioning market, that needs to be fixed.